Okay, it is the glorious 25th of May, and we are outside reading the final section now of Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. And if the recording doesn't work out because we're outside and there's lots of background noise, then we're going to have to redo it later, but hopefully this works. So we'll continue for the last time. He felt, later on, that there should have been more to it. There should have been rushing blue tunnels or flashes, or the sun should have shot round and round the sky. Even pages tearing off a calendar and fluttering away would have been something. But it was just the blackness of the deepest sleep, followed by pain as he hit the floor. Vimes felt arms reach down and haul him to his feet. He shook them off as soon as he was upright and focused through the bleary mist on the face of Captain Carrot. "Good to see you, sir. Oh dear." "I'm fine," croaked Vimes through a throat that felt stuffed with sand. "Where's Carcer?" "You've got a nasty cut on." "Really? I'm amazed," growled Vimes. "Now where the hell is Carcer?" "We don't know, sir. You just appeared in mid-air and landed on the floor. In a lot of blue light, sir." "Ah," muttered Vimes. "Well, he's come back somewhere close, probably." "Right, sir. I'll tell the men to—" "No, don't," said Vimes. "He'll keep. After all, where's he going to go?" He wasn't too sure of his legs. They felt as though they belonged to someone with a very poor sense of balance. "How long was I away?" he said. Ponder Stibbons stepped forward. "About half an hour, Your Grace. We have hypothesized that there was some temporal disturbance which, coupled with the lightning stroke and resonance in the standing wave of the library, caused a space-time rupture." "Yeah, it felt something like that," said Vimes hurriedly. "Half an hour, did you say?" "Did it feel longer?" said Ponder, taking out a notebook. "A bit," Vimes conceded. "Now, has anyone here got a pair of drawers I can see your house from up here." That was Carcer. He liked you to stew, to use your imagination, and Vimes had said, "Where's he going to go?" "Captain, I want you and every man you can spare, every damn man, to get up to my house right now, understand?" he said. "Just do it. Just do it now." He turned to Ridcully. "Arch-Chancellor, can you get me there faster?" "The Watch wants magical assistance?" said the Arch-Chancellor, taken aback. "Please," said Vimes. "Of course, but you realize that you have no clothes on." Vimes gave up. People always wanted explanations. He set off, overruling the jelly in his legs, running out of the octangle and across the lawns until he reached the university's Bridge of Sighs, where he sped past Nobby and Colin, who were drawn into the wake of watchmen running to keep up. On the other side of the bridge was the garden known as the Wizard's Pleasance. Vimes ploughed through it, twigs whipping at his bare legs, and then he was out and onto the old towpath, mud splashing over the blood. Then a right and a left, past amazed bystanders, and then there was the cathead cobbles of Scoon Avenue under his feet, and he found the wind accelerate a little. He didn't slow until he reached the gravel drive, and almost collapsed at the front door, hanging onto the bell pull. There were hurrying feet, and the door was wrenched open. "If you're not Willikins," growled Vimes, focusing, "there's going to be trouble." "Your Grace, whatever has happened?" said the butler, pulling him into the hall. "Nothing," said Vimes. "Just get me a fresh uniform, nice and quietly, and don't let Sybil know." He read something in the way the butler's face changed. "What's happened to Sybil?" Willikins backed away. A bear would have backed away. "Don't go up there, sir. Mrs. Content says it's all rather difficult, sir. Things aren't, happening quite right." "Is the child born?" "No, sir. Apparently not, sir. It's rather... Mrs. Content says she's trying everything, but maybe we ought to send for the doctors, sir." "For a childbirth?" Willikins looked down. After 20 unflappable years as a butler, he was shaking. No one deserved a confrontation with Sam Vimes at a time like this. "Sorry, sir." "No," snapped Vimes. "Don't send for a doctor. I know a doctor. He knows all about this sort of thing. He's better." He ran back outside in time to see a broomstick touch down on the lawn, piloted by the Arch-Chancellor himself. "I thought I'd better come along anyway," said Ridcully. "Is there anything—" Vimes swung himself onto it before the wizard could get off. "Take me to Twinkle Street. Can you do that?" He said, "It's important." "Hang on, Your Grace," said Ridcully, and Vimes's stomach dropped into his legs as the stick climbed vertically. He made a small mental note to promote Buggy Swires and buy him the buzzard he'd always wanted. Anyone prepared to do this every day for the good of the city couldn't be paid too much. He hadn't had time to put a pair of drawers on. It was cold up there, but at least it was fast. "Try my left pocket," said Ridcully, when they were well aloft. "There's something that belongs to you, I believe." Nervously, well aware of what a wizard's pocket might hold, Vimes pulled out a bunch of paper flowers, a string of flags of all nations, and a silver cigar case. "Landed on the Bursar's head," said the Arch-Chancellor, steering around a seagull. "I hope it's not damaged." "It's fine," said Vimes. "Thank you. I'll put it back for now, shall I? Don't seem to have any pockets on me at the moment." It found its way back, Vimes thought. We're home. "And a suit of ornamental armour landed on the high-energy magic building," Ridcully went on, "and I'm happy to report it is very badly bent out of shape," said Vimes. Ridcully hesitated. He was aware of Vimes's feelings of guilt. "Excessively, Your Grace. Completely and irreplaceably bent out of shape because of quantum thingamies, I expect." Vimes shivered. He was still naked. Even the hated formal uniform would have helped up here, but it didn't matter either way now. Gilded feathers and badges and being chilly, there were other things that mattered more and always would. He jumped off the stick before it had stopped, stumbled in a circle, and fell against Dr. Lorne's door, hammering on it with his fists. After a while it opened a crack, and a familiar voice, changed only a little with age, said, "Yes?" Vimes thrust the door fully open. "Look at me, Dr. Lorne," said Vimes. Lorne stared. "Keel?" he said. In his other hand he was holding the world's biggest syringe. "Can't be. They buried John Keel. You know they did," said Vimes. He saw the huge instrument in the man's hand. "What the hell were you going to do with that?" "Baste a turkey, as a matter of fact." "Look, who are you then? Because you look like—" "Grab all your midwifing stuff and come with me now," said Vimes. "All those funny tools you said worked so well. Bring 'em all, right now, and I'll make you the richest doctor that ever lived." And Vimes, said Vimes, a man wearing nothing but mud and blood. Vimes gestured weakly towards the kitchen. "I'll just have to take the turkey out." "Stuff the turkey! I already— Come on!" The broomstick did not fly well with 3 on board, but it was faster than walking, and Vimes at this point knew he'd be incapable of anything else. He was out of breath and strength before he'd been home the first time. Merely standing upright was a test of endurance. It was the broomstick, or crawling. Now it lumbered out of the sky and landed unsteadily on the lawn. "Lady upstairs, big bedroom on left," said Vimes, pushing vaguely at the doctor. "Midwife there, not got a clue. All the money you want. Go on." Lorne hurried off. Vimes, helped by Ridcully, followed rather more stiffly, but as they reached the door the doctor came out, walking backward very slowly. It became apparent, as he emerged, that this was because Detritus's huge crossbow was pressed against his nose. When Vimes spoke, his voice was slightly muffled, because he was lying flat on the ground. "Put the bow down, Sergeant," he managed. "He came rushing in, Mr. Vimes," rumbled Detritus. "That's because he's the doctor, Sergeant. Let him go upstairs. That is an order. Thank you." "Right, Mr. Vimes," said Detritus, stepping aside with reluctance and shouldering the bow, at which point the bow discharged. When the thunder had died away, Vimes got up and looked around. He hadn't actually liked the shrubbery very much. That was just as well. Nothing remained but some tree trunks, and they were all stripped of bark down one side. There were a few small fires. Sorry about that, Mr. Vimes," said the troll. "What did I tell you about Mr. Safety Catch?" said Vimes weakly. "When Mr. Safety Catch is not on, Mr. Crossbow is not your friend," recited Detritus, saluting. "Sorry, sir, but we all a bit tense at this time." "I certainly am," said Ridcully, picking himself up off the lawn and pulling twigs out of his beard. "I may not walk properly for the rest of the day. I suggest, Sergeant, that we pick the doctor up, bring him around under the pump, and take him upstairs." The things that happened next were a waking dream for Vimes. He moved like a ghost through his own house, which was full of watchmen. No one wanted to be anywhere else. He shaved himself very slowly, concentrating on every stroke. He was aware of noises off, which arrived via the pink clouds in his head. He says he wants them boiled, the nasty horrid things. What's that for, to make them softer? Trolls and dwarfs on tonight, every door and window covered, and I mean covered. Stood over me and said damn well boil them for 20 minutes, like they were cabbage. Now he's asked for a small brandy. Mrs. Content stormed out, and he said not to let her in again. Igor came and offered to help, and Lorne took one look and said only if he's been boiled for 20 minutes. Pox, Doctor, when all's said and done. Old Stoneface will cover him with gold if it all turns out all right. Yeah, and if it turns out wrong? Vimes got dressed in his street uniform, moving slowly and willing every limb into position. He brushed his hair. He went out into the hall. He sat down on an uncomfortable chair with his helmet on his knees, while ghosts both living and dead hurried around him. Usually, always, there was a part of Vimes that watched the other parts, because he was at heart a policeman. This time, it wasn't there. It was in here with the rest of him, staring at nothing and waiting. Someone take up more towels! Now he's asked for a large brandy. He wants to see Mr. Vimes! Vimes' brain lit up from whatever little pilot light of thought had been operating at the most basic level. He walked up the stairs, helmet under his arm, like a man going to take a statement. He knocked at the door. Lorne opened it. He was holding a brandy glass in his other hand and moved aside with a smile. Sybil was sitting up. He saw, through the mist of exhaustion, that she was holding something wrapped in a shawl. He's called Sam, she said, and no argument. The sun came out. I'll teach him to walk, beamed Vimes. I'm good at teaching people to walk. And he fell asleep before he hit the carpet. Sorry, I'm going to take a second now. It was a pleasant stroll in the early evening air. Vimes trailed cigar smoke behind him as he walked down to Sidopolis Yard, where he acknowledged the cheers and congratulations and thanked people for the lovely flowers. His next stop was at Dr. Lorne's house, where he sat and spoke for a while of such things as memory and how tricky it can be, and forgetfulness and how profitable it could prove. Then, with the doctor, he went to his bank. This institution was, not surprisingly, willing to open outside normal hours for a man who was a duke, and the richest man in the city, and the commander of the city watch, and not least quite prepared to kick the door down. There he signed over $100,000 and the freehold of a large corner site in Goosegate to one Dr. J. Mossy Lorne. And then, alone, he went up to Small Gods. Legitimate first, whatever his private feelings, knew enough not to shut the gates on this night, and he'd filled the lamps. Vimes strolled over the moss-grown gravel. In the twilight, the lilac blooms seemed to shine. Their scent hung in the air like fog. He waded through the grass and reached the grave of John Keel, where he sat on the headstone, taking care not to disturb the wreaths. He had a feeling that the sergeant would understand that a copper sometimes needed to take the weight off his feet. And he finished his cigar and stared at the sunset. After a while, he was aware of a scraping noise to his left and could just make out the turf starting to sag in one of the graves. A grey hand was thrust out of the ground, clutching a shovel. A few pieces of turf were pushed aside, and with some effort, Reg's shoe rose from the grave. He was halfway out before he noticed Vimes and nearly fell back. "Oh, you frightened the life out of me, Mr. Vimes." "Sorry, Reg," said Vimes. "Of course, when I say you frightened the life out of me," the zombie began gloomily. "Yes, Reg, I understand you. Quiet down there, was it?" "Very peaceful, sir, very peaceful. I think I'll have to get myself a new coffin before next year, though. They don't last any time at all these days." "I suppose not that many people look for durability, Reg." Reg slowly shoveled the soil back into place. "I know everyone thinks it's a bit odd, but I think I owe it to them, really," he said. "It's only one day a year, but it's like solidarity." "With the downtrodden masses, eh?" said Vimes. "What, sir?" "No argument from me, Reg," said Vimes happily. This was a perfect moment. Not even Reg, fussing around smoothing down the earth and patting turf into place, could detract from it. "There'll come a time when it'll all be clear," Sweeper had said. A perfect moment. The occupants of these graves had died for something. In the sunset glow, in the rising of the moon, in the taste of the cigar, in the warmth that comes from sheer exhaustion, Vimes saw it. History finds a way. The nature of events changed, but the nature of the dead had not. It had been a mean, shameful little fight that had ended them, a fly-specked footnote of history, but they hadn't been mean or shameful men. They hadn't run, and they could have run with honour. They'd stayed, and he wondered if the path had seemed as clear to them then as it did to him now. They'd stayed not because they wanted to be heroes, but because they chose to think of it as their job, and it was in front of them. "I'll be off then, sir," said Reg, shouldering his shovel. He seemed a long way away. "Sir?" "Yeah, right. Right, Reg. Thank you," mumbled Vimes, and in the pink glow of the moment watched the corporal march down the darkening path and out into the city. John Keel, Billy Wiglet, Horace Nancy Ball, Di Dickens, Cecil Snouty Clapman, Ned Coates, and, technically, Reg Shoe. Probably there were no more than 20 people in the city now who knew all the names, because there were no statues, no monuments, nothing written down anywhere. You had to have been there. He felt privileged to have been there twice. The night was welling up as the sun set. It unfolded from the shadows where it had hidden from the day, and flowed and joined together. He felt his senses flow with it, spreading out like the whiskers of a dark, giant cat. Beyond the gates of the cemetery, the city noise died down a little, although Ankh-Morpork never truly slept. It probably didn't dare. Vimes felt now, in this strange, calm mood, that he could hear everything, just as he had done back in that terrible moment in Heroes Street when history came to claim its own. He heard the tiny sounds in the stone wall as it cooled, the slither of dirt under Reg's vacated plot settled, the faint movements of the long grass around the graves. 1,000 subtle sounds added up to a richly textured, localized silence. It was the song of the dark, and in it, on the edge of detection, was a discord. Let's see. He'd put a guard on his house, and they were core people, ones he could trust not to stand around and get bored, but to remain watchful all night long. He hadn't had to explain how important that was, so the house was safe. And the watch houses had double guard too. There was something wrong with Keel's grave. There was always the egg, every year, a little joke out of history, but now it looked as though there was nothing down there but bits of eggshell. As he leaned forward to look, the blade went over his head. But the beast had been ready. The beast didn't think about guards and defences. The beast didn't think at all. But it forever sniffed the air and eyed the shadows and sampled the night, and almost before the swish of the sword, it had sent Vimes's hand thrusting into his pocket. Crouched, he swiveled and punched Carcer on the kneecap with one of Mrs. Goodbody's finest items. He heard things crackle. He launched himself up and forward and bore Carcer to the ground. There was no science to this. The beast was off the chain and looking to kill. It was not often that Vimes was sure he could make the world a better place, but he was now. It was all very clear now. And also very hard. The sword had gone, tumbling into the grass as Carcer went down. But Carcer fought, and was as tough as teak, and was very hard with your hands to kill a man who does not want to be killed. Vimes shook off the brass knuckles, because what he needed to do now was throttle. There was no room, though. Carcer was trying to stick a thumb in his eye. They rolled across the graves, scrabbling and struggling for advantage. Blood filled Vimes's left eye. His rage needed just 1 second, and that second was being denied. He rolled again, and flung out a hand. There was the sword. He rolled again, and staggered up with the blade in his hand. Carcer had rolled too, and was pulling himself up with remarkable speed for a man with only one good knee. Vimes saw that he was dragging himself upright by one of the lilac trees. Blossoms and scent floated down into the darkness. Metal slid. There was the momentary gleam of a knife, and a little chuckle, Carcer's little laugh that said, "Hey, this is all good fun, eh?" "So who's going to arrest me?" he said, as they both gulped air. "Sergeant Keel or Commander Vimes?" "Who said you're going to be arrested?" said Vimes, trying to fill his lungs. "I'm fighting an attacker, Carcer." "Oh, you was, Mr. Vimes," said the shadow. "Only now I'm in front of you." Metal clinked on the gravel path. and I ain't armed no more, ha. Thrown down my last weapon. Can't kill an unarmed man, Mr. Vimes. You got to arrest me now, drag me in front of veterinary, let me have my little say, ha. You can't kill me just standing here. No one wants to hear anything you've got to say, Casa. Then you better kill me, Mr. Vimes. I got no weapon. I can't run. You've always got an extra knife, Casa, said Vimes above the roar of the beast. Not this time, Mr. Vimes. Come on, Mr. Vimes. Can't blame a man for trying, eh? A man's got to give it his best shot, right? No hard feelings. And that was Casa. No hard feelings. His best shot. Can't blame a man for trying. Innocent words got dirty in his mouth. Vimes took a step closer. You got a nice home to go to, Mr. Vimes. I mean, what have I got? And the man was convincing. He fooled everybody. You could almost forget the corpses. Vimes glanced down. Whoops, sorry, said Casa. I walked over your grave there. No offence meant, eh? Vimes said nothing. The beast was howling. It wanted to shut that mouth up. You're not going to kill me, Mr. Vimes. Not you. Not you with a badge. That ain't your way, Mr. Vimes. Without looking, Vimes reached up and tore his badge off. Ah, well, I know you want to give me a fright, Mr. Vimes, and many would say you got the right. Look, here's what I'll do. I'll throw away my other knife. Ha. You knew I got another one, right? It was the voice. It was the voice. It could make you think what you knew was wrong. Okay, I can see you're upset. Ha, fair enough. And you know I've always got a third knife. Well, I'm dropping it now. See, there it goes. Vimes was only a step or two away now. That's it, Mr. Vimes. No more knives. I can't run. I surrender. No messing about this time. I give in, okay? Just arrest me. For old time's sake. The beast screamed inside Vimes. It screamed that no one would blame him for doing the hangman out of $10 and a free breakfast. Yeah, and you could say a swift stab now was a merciful solution, because every hangman knew you could go the easy way or the hard way, and there wasn't one in the country who'd let something like Casa go the easy way. The gods knew the man deserved it. But young Sam was watching him across 30 years. When we break down, it all breaks down. And that's just how it works. You can bend it, and if you make it hot enough, you can bend it in a circle, but you can't break it. When you break it, it all breaks down until there's nothing unbroken. It starts here and now. He lowered the sword. Casa looked up, grinning, and said, Never tastes right, does it? Ha, an egg without salt. Vimes felt his hand begin to move of its own accord, and stopped. Red rage froze. There was the beast all around him, and that's all it was, a beast. Useful, but still a beast. You could hold it on a chain and make it dance and juggle balls, but it didn't think. It was dumb. What you were was not the beast. You didn't have to do what it wanted. If you did, Casa won. He dropped the sword. Casa stared at him, the gleam of Vimes's sudden smile more worrying than the rictus of his rage. Then metal gleamed in his hand, but Vimes was already on him, grabbing the hand, slamming it again and again on John Keel's headstone until the hidden knife dropped from bleeding fingers. He dragged the man upright with both hands forced behind his back and rammed him hard against the stone. See that up in the sky, Casa? He said, his mouth by the man's ear. That's the sunset, that is. That's the stars. And they'll shine all the better on my lad Sam tomorrow night, because they won't be shining down on you, Casa, by reason of the fact that before the dew's off the leaves in the morning, I'll drag you in front of veterinary, and we'll have the witnesses there, lots of them, and maybe even a lawyer for you if there's any of them who could plead for you with a straight face. And then, Casa, we'll take you up to the tanty, one gallows, no waiting, and you can dance the hemp fandango, and then I'll bleedin' well go home and maybe even have a hard-boiled egg. You're hurting! You know you're right there, Casa. Vimes managed to get both the man's wrists in a steel grip and rip the sleeve off his own shirt. I'm hurting and I'm still doing it by the book. He wrapped the linen around the wrists a couple times and knotted it firmly. I'll make sure there's water in your cell, Casa. I'll make sure you get breakfast, anything you like. I'll make sure the hangman doesn't get sloppy and let you choke to death. I'll even make sure the trapdoor is greased. He released the pressure. Casa stumbled, and Vimes kicked his legs from under him. The machine ain't broken, Casa. The machine is waiting for you, he said, tearing a sleeve off the man's own shirt and fashioning it into a crude binding for his ankles. The city will kill you dead. The proper wheels will turn. It'll be fair. I'll make sure of that. Afterward, you won't be able to say you didn't have a fair trial. You won't be able to say anything. Ha ha. I'll see to that too. He stood back. Good evening, Your Grace, said Lord Vetinari. Vimes spun around. There was a change of texture in the darkness, which could have been man-shaped. Vimes snatched up his sword and peered into the night. The shape came forward, became recognizable. How long were you there? He demanded. Oh, some little while, said the patrician. Like you, I prefer to come alone and contemplate. You were very quiet, said Vimes accusingly. Is that a crime, Your Grace? And you heard? A very neat arrest, said Vetinari. Congratulations, Your Grace. Vimes looked at the unblooded sword. I suppose so, he said, temporarily derailed. On the birth of your son, I meant. Oh, yes. Oh, of course, yes. Well, thank you. A healthy lad, I'm given to understand. We'd have been just as happy with a daughter, said Vimes quickly. Quite so. These are modern times, after all. Oh, I see you've dropped your badge. Vimes glanced at the long grass. I'll come and find it in the morning, he said. But this, he picked up the moaning Carcer and slung him over his shoulder with a grunt, is going back to Sidopoulos Yard right now. They walked slowly down the gravel path, leaving the scent of lilac behind. Ahead was the everyday stink of the world. You know, said Lord Vetinari after a few moments, it has often crossed my mind that those men deserve a proper memorial of some sort. Oh, yes, said Vimes in a non-committal voice. In one of the main squares, perhaps? Yes, that would be a good idea. Perhaps a tableau in bronze, said Vimes, all 7 of them raising the flag, perhaps? Bronze, yes, said Vetinari. Really? And some sort of inspiring slogan, said Vimes. Yes, indeed. Something like, perhaps, they did the job they had to do? No, said Vimes, coming to a halt under the lamp by the crypt entrance. How dare you? How dare you? At this time, in this place, they did the job they didn't have to do, and they died doing it, and you can't give them anything. Do you understand? They fought for those who'd been abandoned, they fought for one another, and they were betrayed. Men like them always are. What good would a statue be? It'd just inspire new fools to believe they're going to be heroes. They wouldn't want that. Just let them be. Forever. They walked in heavy silence, and then Vetinari said, as if there had been no outburst, Happily, it appears that the new deacon of the temple has suddenly heard the call. What call? I'm never very good at religious matters, but apparently he was filled with a burning desire to spread the good word to the benighted heathens, said Vetinari. Where? I suggested Ting Ling. That's right on the other side of the world. Well, a good word can't be spread too far, Sergeant. Well, at least it puts... Vimes stopped at the entrance gates. Overhead, another lamp flickered. He dropped Carcer to the ground. You knew. You bloody well knew, didn't you? Not until, 1 second ago, said Vetinari. As one man to another, Commander, I must ask you. Did you ever wonder why I wore the lilac? Yeah, I wondered, said Vimes. But you never asked. No, I never asked, said Vimes shortly. It's a flower. Anyone can wear a flower. At this time, in this place? Tell me, then. Then I'll recall the day I was sent on an urgent errand, said Vetinari. I had to save the life of a man. Not a usual errand for an assassin, although in fact I had already saved it once before. He gave Vimes a quizzical look. You shot a man who was aiming a crossbow, said Vimes. An inspired guess, Commander. Yes, I have an eye for the unique. But now I was fighting time. The streets were blocked, chaos and confusion were everywhere, and it wasn't as if I even knew where he could be found. In the end, I took to the rooftops, and thus I came at last to Cable Street, where there was a different sort of confusion. Tell me what you saw, said Vimes. I saw a man called Carcer vanish, and I saw a man called John Keel die. At least I saw him dead. Really, said Vimes. I joined the fight. I snatched up a lilac bloom from a fallen man, and, I have to say, held it in my mouth. I'd like to think I made some difference. I certainly killed 4 men, although I take no particular pride in that. They were thugs, bullies, no real skill. Besides, their leader had apparently fled, and what morale they had gone with him. The men with the lilac, I have to say, fought like tigers. Not skillfully, I'll admit, but when they saw their leader was down, they took the other side to pieces. astonishing. And then afterwards, I took a look at John Keel. It was John Keel. How could there be any question about that? Blood on him, of course. There was blood everywhere. His wounds looked somewhat old, I thought. And death, as we know, changes people. Yet I remember wondering, this much? So I put it down as half a mystery, and today, Sergeant, we find the other half of the mystery. It's wonderful, isn't it, how alike men can be? I can imagine that even your Sergeant Colin would not realize anything. After all, he saw Keel die, and he watched you grow up. Where is this leading? Vimes demanded. Nowhere, Commander. What could I prove? And to what end would I prove it? Then I'm saying nothing. I cannot imagine what you could say, said Vetinari. No, I agree. Let us leave the dead alone. But for you, Commander, as a little gift on the occasion of the birth of... There's nothing I want, said Vimes quickly. You can't promote me any further. There's nothing left to bribe me with. I've got more than I deserve. The watch is working well. We don't even need a new bloody dartboard. In memory of the late John Keel, Vetinari began. I warned you. I can give you back Treacle Mine Road. Only the high-pitched squeak of bats hunting around the poplars broke the silence that followed. Then Vimes muttered, A dragon burned it years ago. The watch-house was in ruins. Some dwarves live in the cellars now. Yes, Commander, but dwarves... Well, dwarves are so refreshingly open about money. The more money the city offers, the less dwarf there is. The stable's still there and the old mining tower, stout stone walls all around. It could all be put back, Commander, in memory of John Keel, a man who in a few short days changed the lives of many and perhaps saved some sanity in a mad world. Why, in a few months you could light the lamp over the door. Again, all that could be heard was the bats. Perhaps they could even bring back the smell, Vimes thought. Perhaps there could be a window above the privy that'd spring open if you thumped it just right. Perhaps they could teach new coppers to learn old tricks. We could do with the space, it's true, he conceded with some effort. I can see you like the sound of it already, said Vetinari, and if you care to come along to my office tomorrow, we can settle the... There's a trial tomorrow, Vimes said sharply. Ah, yes, of course, and it will be a fair one, said the patrician. It better be, said Vimes. I want this bastard to hang, after all. Very well, then, said Vetinari. Afterward, I'm going home to my family for a while, said Vimes. Good, well said, said Vetinari, not missing a beat. You have a gift, I have noticed, for impressive oratory, and Vimes heard the gentle note of warning as he added, At this time, Commander, and in this place. That's Sergeant-at-Arms, thank you, said Vimes. For now. He grabbed Carser's shirt collar and dragged him to justice. On the way back to Scoon Avenue in the dark of night, Vimes walked along the alley behind Clay Lane and stopped as he reckoned he was about a halfway point between the backs of the pawn shop and the shonky shop, and therefore behind the temple. He threw his cigar stub over the fence. He heard it land on the gravel, which moved a little, and then he went home. And the world turned towards morning. We made it through it. Happy, glorious 25th. And have a hard-boiled egg.